97, maybe 98. And Jeff called me and said, and he told me about it. And he said, hey, I'm in New York with David Crosby and James Raymond, and we need a place to write for a couple of days for our first album. And I had a recording studio in the city. And so it was great. I got to hang out and meet David Crosby. So that's when I met him. And he spent a couple of days in my studio. And then over the years, I got to be close with James, and Jeff and I have always been close and playing music together. And eventually David and I'd go to shows, and eventually we wrote together and did some shows together. So we got to be friendly over the course of however many, was that 25 years or more? More than that.
You'd been working with him again. I mean, he'd announced his retirement, and then he's working again with you. The band was getting ready to tour. You had everybody back together, all the original people, so you would have the sound engineers and you had the road crew, and everybody knew each other. Yeah. And to whet the appetite even more, you said at the time, look, this is as close as you'll get to Crosby, Stills and Nash and that sound and how they sounded. So with that as a setup, I mean, it just had everybody going, right, wow, this is going to be amazing.
Well, David wanted to, so David and I knew each other. He'd sang on a couple of my records. I'd played on a couple of his records. We'd written together, and we'd done some one-off shows, like a benefit show or a festival, but I never was in the touring band. Just he had his guys, and that was fine. And we were having lunch, just hanging out up in Santa Ynez, where he lived up in above Santa Barbara in California. And he said, well, Steve, I'm done performing. I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, I had the surgery on my hand. It was supposed to fix this problem, and it actually got worse. And he said, I can pick up a guitar, I can write, but I couldn't play 2 hours of a show anymore. My hands couldn't do it. And I said, well, I could play your parts. And he didn't really say anything, but sure enough, a couple months later, he called me up and said, when you said you could play, you really think you could do that? And my response was, David, I can play Bach, I can play David Crosby. But it was just as complicated as learning Bach, to be honest with you. So we spent a couple days at his place, and I filmed him. Thank God I still have this film, but it'll die with me. It's not for public consumption, of him showing me all the tunings and how he played, how he fingered things. And then about a month, I learned it all. I went back about a month later. I said, okay, let's play. And so he could check it out. And he went, wow, this will work. Let's do it. Let's put the band together. But what he wanted to do, I think especially with me playing and him just being free to just sing, he wanted to do a little bit more of the repertoire from CSNY as opposed to just David Crosby, which is a beautiful repertoire. And he has all these incredible solo records, but he wanted to expand it, I think. So we were learning, we went back, we were doing Wooden Ships. We were doing stuff that he hadn't necessarily been doing in his solo shows. And beautiful band we put together, and we had the three of James, Raymond, and David and I rehearsed a bunch, and then we brought in the band. Thank God we had one full rehearsal. That I'm really grateful that happened. I could really hear how special it was going to be.
Was that the one at Santa Barbara, literally the week before?
Well, we had a rehearsal in L.A., and it was and then 4 weeks before our first show, David, out of the blue, passed away. And
so it must have been a huge shock when that happened, because I mean, you literally had been talking to him on the Wednesday, then you get a text from his son saying, he'd passed away. I mean, that is enough to stop you in your tracks, especially as it's unexpected.
Well, like you say, I mean, I think if my memory is correct, it was a Tuesday night. It was like 11 o'clock at night, and David and I we talked every day at that point almost about the tour, and we were talking about, he said, we should add a second night because I think we should record the show live because the energy is going to be so great, the first show, and it just, it's Tuesday night, and then I get this cryptic text the next day. I didn't even understand it. Like, David's gone. Like, gone? What do you mean he's gone? Like, it didn't make sense to me, having just had this nice conversation with him the night before. So it was very shocking. It was incredibly sad
Mm.
because he just was this big figure from even before we were going to go play a tour. He was my friend who was like this funny, brilliant father figure who used to make fun of me, and I just loved his presence and his being and being around my life in any way. And then of course we had this big plan. We were going to go tour. We were going to do this thing, that I'd always wanted to do since the first time that my Little Blue opened for him. I got us a gig at the Wheeler Opera House in Aspen in like '98 with CPR and Little Blue opened. Then we all played together. And I always said, it'd be great to actually be playing this music with him on a tour. And finally it was going to happen. So it was tough on many levels. Yeah.
Did you actually record any of the rehearsals, film or sound?
A tiny bit. Like, unfortunately, I had the camera set up. I had my phone set up. I was going to do that whole first rehearsal, and I think I did the first two songs, and then I forgot to turn it back on.